You think you could handle China. You have hiked national parks, maybe driven a mountain switchback or two, maybe even white-knuckled it across a narrow ridge trail somewhere in Colorado. But there is a country where monks built temples on cliff faces so vertical that a single misstep means a 1,000-foot drop. Where engineers carved roads straight through solid rock because no government would do it for them. Where gorges plunge so deep that the Colorado River's Grand Canyon looks like a shallow ditch. China holds places that make seasoned alpinists question their nerve, and trained engineers question their sanity. This is your invitation. Walk with Explore Danger into the parts of China that most travel videos are too cautious to show you. The Great Wall of China, wild sections. Most people picture the Great Wall as the restored postcard version near Beijing. Smooth stone, iron railings, gift shops at the base. That version exists, but it covers barely 5% of the wall's true length. The rest, over 13,000 miles of it, is something else entirely. Crumbling watchtowers stand open to the sky, with no barriers on edges that drop 40 feet to rocky hillsides. Staircases rise at grades exceeding 60 degrees, their stones loose and uneven after 6 centuries of weather. The wild sections near Zhangye are where hikers disappear. Between 2015 and 2020, local rescue teams responded to over 200 emergency calls on this stretch alone.
The wall here follows a knife-edge ridge.
At nearly 3,300 feet above sea level. In places, the walkway narrows to less than 3 feet wide, with nothing but gravity on either side. You hear the wind first. It funnels through the broken towers with a low whistle that never stops. Your hands grip stone that shifts slightly under your weight. Fog rolls across the ridgeline without warning, cutting visibility to arm's length. Your boots scrape against steps that were built for soldiers in leather-soled shoes, not modern hiking boots. Farmers in the villages below these sections have served as unofficial rescue guides for generations. They know every crumbling section, every collapsed watchtower, every point where the wall becomes impassable. They do this because no official rescue infrastructure exists here. A broken ankle on wild wall means a 6-hour carry down a mountainside on a makeshift stretcher. A fall from the exposed ridgeline sections is almost never survivable. These farmers have carried out bodies. Millions of forced laborers built these walls across some of the harshest terrain in northern China. Many were buried inside the structure itself when they collapsed from exhaustion. The wall you walk on is, in a very real sense, a grave. And what lies ahead in Zhangjiajie makes this ancient ridgeline feel almost tame. If that image of walking a crumbling ridgeline with no barriers unsettles you, take a second and drop a comment below. Would you hike the wild wall? Or would you stick to the tourist sections?
Explore Danger wants to hear where you draw the line.
Tianmen Mountain, Zhangjiajie. A bus climbs 99 hairpin turns up a road carved into a vertical cliff face. Each turn is blind. Each turn has no guardrail. The road rises over 3,600 feet in just under 7 miles, and the drops beside it are absolute. Tianmen Mountain in Zhangjiajie is not a gentle peak with a scenic overlook. It is a 5,000-foot wall of limestone that erupts from the city floor like a broken tooth. The cable car ride to the summit stretches 4.7 miles, making it one of the longest in the world. It crosses a vertical gain of nearly 4,300 feet. Somewhere around the halfway point, the city below becomes a miniature model and the mountain ahead fills the entire windshield of the cabin. The cabins sway in crosswinds that gust above 40 miles per hour during storm season. At the top, 999 stone steps rise toward Tianmen Cave, a natural arch 430 feet tall and 190 feet wide, punched clean through the mountain. Local legend calls it the Gateway to Heaven. Geologists call it the result of water erosion over 400 million years. Either way, standing beneath it forces your neck back until you are staring straight up at sky framed by raw stone. In 2013, a Hungarian wingsuit pilot attempted to fly through the cave's opening at over 100 miles per hour. The margin for error was less than 25 feet on each side. He made it. Others who have attempted similar stunts on Tianmen's cliffs have not been as fortunate.
The mountain's updrafts are violent and unpredictable.
Residents of Zhangjiajie have lived beneath this mountain for centuries. For them, the cave is not a tourist attraction. It is a spiritual landmark, older than any temple, older than any dynasty. When clouds pour through the arch like smoke, locals say the mountain is breathing. The 99 turns of that road suddenly feel less like engineering and more like a pilgrimage designed to test your resolve. But Tianmen's dramatic cliffs are only stone and wind. The next place adds something far harder to navigate: centuries of spiritual weight that changes the air itself. Mount Wutai, Shanxi province. The temperature at the summit of Mount Wutai drops below freezing more than 200 days per year. At 10,033 feet, its highest peak, Yedo, stands as the tallest point in northern China. Snow covers the upper trails from October through May. And yet, for over 1,500 years, monks have lived here year-round in monasteries with no central heating and minimal insulation. 5 flat-topped peaks surround a central basin, creating a natural amphitheater that traps cold air and channels wind across the plateau at speeds that regularly exceed 50 miles per hour. The geography is punishing. The climate is hostile. And that is precisely why Buddhist monks chose it. Walking the pilgrim trail between monasteries, you pass through pine forests where the only sound is your own breathing and the occasional crack of a branch under ice. The air thins noticeably above 9,000 feet. Prayer flags snap in the wind with a sharp rhythm. Stone steps worn smooth by millions of feet over centuries lead to temple doors that have opened and closed since the Tang Dynasty, over 1,300 years ago. More than 50 active monasteries still operate on the mountain. The Jiantong Temple alone covers 86,000 square feet and houses a bronze hall cast entirely from metal in the 16th century. During the Cultural Revolution, Red Guards destroyed countless Buddhist sites across China. Mount Wutai survived largely intact because local villagers hid sacred texts and statues in caves and sealed the entrances. Each year, over 1 million pilgrims climb these paths. Some do it on their knees, prostrating their full body length with every step for the entire ascent. The round trip takes weeks. Frostbite, altitude sickness, and exhaustion send dozens to local clinics every season. For these pilgrims, the suffering is the point. The mountain does not reward comfort. It rewards endurance. And if endurance is what the mountain demands, The next destination on this journey requires something more primal. Raw nerve and a complete disregard for the void beneath your feet. 1 million pilgrims climb Mount Wutai on faith alone. If that dedication moves you, hit the like button. That single tap helps Explore Danger bring more of these hidden stories to light. Huashan Plank Walk, Shanxi Province. 3 wooden planks, each about 1 foot wide, bolted to a vertical granite cliff 7,000 feet above the valley floor. That is the Huashan Plank Walk. There is no railing on the outer edge. There is no net below. For centuries, there was no safety harness either. Taoist monks carved this path into the rock face over 700 years ago, using hand chisels and rope, and they did it barefoot. Mount Huashan rises to 7,070 feet. Its 5 peaks are connected by ridge lines so narrow that in places your shoulders nearly touch rock on both sides. The plank walk itself extends along the south peak's sheerest cliff. The planks are roughly 30 inches wide and project outward from the rock face over a drop that falls straight down for nearly 2,000 feet to the canyon below. Iron chains hammered into the granite centuries ago are your only handhold. Your fingers wrap around cold metal worn smooth by millions of grips. The wind hits your back without warning. Your feet feel every creak of the aging wood through your shoe soles. Looking down is involuntary. The valley floor is so far below that individual trees are invisible. Before the modern harness system was installed in the early 2000s, falls were not uncommon. Local records from Huayin City document over 100 fatalities on Huashan's various trails between 1980 and 2003. The plank walk section accounted for a significant share, though exact numbers remain officially unconfirmed by provincial authorities. Today, visitors clip into a steel cable that runs along the cliff.
The harness system has dramatically reduced fatalities.
But the fear is completely intact. Your lizard brain does not care about carabiners when your eyes register a half-mile of empty air beneath your feet. Taoist priests still use these paths to reach the small temple at the end of the plank walk. The same temple that has stood on that ledge since the Yuan dynasty. For them, this is not a thrill ride. It is the commute. Standing on those planks, you realize the mountain does not care whether you are brave. It only cares whether you are careful. And careful will not help at all where this journey heads next, to a place where the ground itself becomes the spectacle. Would you clip in and step onto those planks? Be honest. Drop your answer in the comments. Explore Danger reads every single one. Zhangye Dangxia National Geological Park, Gansu Province. The mountains here are striped. Red, orange, gold, teal, and lavender run in parallel bands across sandstone ridges that stretch for 200 square miles. This is not a painting. This is not filtered photography. These colors are real, and they formed over 24 million years as iron, trace minerals, and sandstone compressed into layers, then buckled upward by tectonic collision between the Indian and Eurasian plates. At sunrise, the low-angle light hits these formations and the colors ignite. The reds become almost fluorescent. The golds shimmer as if lit from inside the rock. Photographers arrive before dawn and stay until the last light disappears. because no 2 minutes produce the same palette. The temperature swings are brutal. Summer days reach 100 degrees Fahrenheit, while winter mornings plunge below zero. Boardwalks now guide visitors through the park. Before these were built, foot traffic was eroding the soft sandstone at a measurable rate. Studies from Lanzhou University estimated that uncontrolled tourism between 2005 and 2012 degraded surface formations by up to 3 inches in high-traffic areas. 3 inches does not sound like much, until you understand these layers took millions of years to form. The formations stand between 300 and 1,600 feet tall. Some ridges are so narrow at the top that wind erosion has sculpted them into fin shapes barely a foot thick. Park rangers have documented collapses of smaller formations after heavy rains, sending multi-ton slabs of colored rock tumbling onto trails below. In 2018, a tourist who climbed over a barrier for a photo triggered a small rock slide that closed a section for 3 weeks. Farmers in the surrounding Gansu countryside lived among these formations for generations without knowing they were geologically significant. For them, the striped hills were simply the landscape of home. Today, their villages sit at the edges of a UNESCO World Heritage Site that draws over 3 million visitors a year. The land that fed their families for centuries now feeds a tourism economy they never imagined. Nature spent 24 million years painting these mountains. But further south, nature spent even less time carving something far more violent. A gorge so deep and narrow it nearly swallowed a river whole. 3 million visitors a year come to see 24-million-year-old rock art made by the earth itself. If that kind of timescale puts things in perspective for you, share this video with someone who needs to see it. Tiger Leaping Gorge, Yunnan Province. The Jinsha River drops 6,500 feet in elevation as it tears through a canyon barely 80 feet wide at its narrowest point. Tiger Leaping Gorge is one of the deepest river gorges on the planet. The walls on either side, Jade Dragon Snow Mountain and Haba Snow Mountain, rise over 12,000 feet above the water. That depth is more than twice the Grand Canyon's deepest point. The hiking trail that follows the gorge's upper rim stretches roughly 13 miles. It is not maintained by any government agency. Sections of the path are barely 18 inches wide, cut into loose shale that crumbles underfoot. Rockfalls are constant during the rainy season from June through September. In 2015, a landslide buried a 200-foot section of the trail and killed 2 hikers from South Korea. Their bodies were not recovered for 11 days. Walking this trail, the sound of the river reaches you long before you see it. A deep, continuous roar echoes off the canyon walls, like distant thunder that never stops. The mist rising from the rapids below soaks everything: your clothes, your pack, the rock face you are gripping for balance. At the 28 Bends section, the trail switchbacks up a near vertical slope. For 2,000 feet of elevation gain in under 2 miles. The Naxi people have lived at the edges of this gorge for centuries. Their villages cling to terraces carved into the mountainside above the water. For generations, the only way to reach a doctor, a school, or a market was to walk the gorge trail. There was no road until 2003, and even now that road is closed by landslides for weeks each year. When the river surges during monsoon season, the water volume increases tenfold. Boulders the size of cars roll along the riverbed. The narrow point where legend says a tiger leaped across becomes a funnel of white water moving at over 30 feet per second. Anyone in the gorge during a flash surge has minutes, not hours, to reach higher ground. The The gorge gives no second warnings. Explore Danger covers places most channels will not touch, because the research alone takes longer than some creators spend on entire videos. If that depth matters to you, subscribing means you will never miss one. Erhai Lake, Dali, Yunnan. From a distance, Erhai Lake looks like stillness given form. A 95 square mile sheet of turquoise water sits cradled between the Tianmen Mountains to the west and gentle farmland to the east. Morning mist floats a few inches above the surface. Fishing boats glide so slowly they barely leave a wake. It looks like the safest, most peaceful place in all of China. The danger here is invisible. The lake sits at an elevation of 6,400 feet. The Changshan Range behind it reaches over 13,500 feet and acts as a wall that funnels wind through the valley at speeds that routinely hit 45 miles per hour without warning. Small fishing vessels have capsized in sudden squalls, and between 2010 and 2020, local maritime records documented over 30 drowning incidents on the lake, most involving boats under 20 feet in length, caught by wind shifts. The Bai people have fished and farmed around Erhai for over 1,000 years. Their villages line the shore in clusters of white-walled homes, with gray tile roofs and hand-painted murals that tell stories stretching back centuries. Narrow stone paths wind between houses, barely wide enough for a single cart. The Bai cormorant fishermen still practice a technique that is over 1,300 years old, training birds to dive for fish and return to the boat. But Erhai's greatest danger is ecological. Between 2000 and 2016, algae blooms fueled by agricultural runoff and unchecked hotel construction around the shoreline nearly killed the lake. Oxygen levels in the deeper waters dropped below survival thresholds for native fish species. The Chinese government shut down over 2,000 guest houses and restaurants along the shore in 2017, forcibly relocating businesses that had operated for decades. Today, strict regulations control what can be built within 50 feet of the shoreline. Water quality has improved, but scientists from Yunnan University warn that full ecological recovery will take at least 30 more years.
The Bai communities that once welcomed tourism now live with the consequences. Too much, too fast. Their lake survived, barely. Their way of life is still adapting. What lies ahead is not a gentle lake with a hidden crisis. It is a mountain that looks like it was designed by something not entirely of this world. The Bai people nearly lost a lake their ancestors fished for 1,000 years. If that story deserves to be heard, tap the like button. It costs nothing, and it carries these voices further. Fanjing Shan, Guizhou Province. A single rock column rises 330 feet straight up from a mountain ridge, then splits into two separate peaks at the top. Each peak holds a Buddhist temple. A narrow stone bridge connects the two. Below the bridge, there is nothing but 330 feet of vertical air, and then 8,000 feet of forested mountain slope falling toward the valley floor. Fanjing Shan looks like a place invented by a fantasy artist. It is completely real. The mountain's highest point reaches 8,430 feet. Its summit zone sits above the cloud line more than 300 days per year, creating the persistent illusion that the temples are floating in the sky. The stone steps to the top number over 8,000, carved into slopes that exceed 70 degrees in the steepest sections. The final approach to the twin peaks requires climbing a near-vertical staircase, bolted to the rock face with iron anchors embedded in the stone. Mist wraps the upper mountain in a silence so complete you hear your own pulse. The rock is wet year-round. Moss covers every surface not directly walked on. Your hands grip chain railings slick with condensation as your feet search for traction on steps that have been polished smooth by centuries of pilgrims. Fanjing Shan is home to the Guizhou snub-nosed monkey, a species that exists nowhere else on Earth. Fewer than 750 remain. The mountain's ancient forest ecosystem, preserved by its extreme isolation and terrain, has protected these primates for thousands of years. UNESCO designated Fanjing Shan a World Heritage Site in 2018, specifically because of this irreplaceable biodiversity. During peak tourist season, over 8,000 visitors per day attempt the climb. The park caps daily entry at that number, but the narrow paths still create dangerous bottlenecks. In 2019, 2 hikers suffered cardiac events on the steepest section and could not be evacuated by stretcher due to the trail width. Emergency responders carried them down on their backs. The stone steps are a single lane. There is no passing. When someone stops, everyone stops. The temples have stood on those twin peaks for over 500 years. The monks who maintain them make the climb weekly. For them, every ascent is a prayer. For everyone else, every ascent is a test. And the next test in this journey involves 4 peaks named after sisters, who, according to legend, turned to stone rather than surrender. 8,000 steps, 8,430 feet of altitude, and temples balanced on a split rock above the clouds. If that image stays in your mind, drop a comment telling Explore Danger which place so far has hit you hardest. Sigunyang Mountain, Sichuan Province. The 4th highest peak in Sichuan Province stands at 20,505 feet. That makes Sigunyang's main summit taller than any mountain in the contiguous United States, taller than any peak in Europe, and taller than anything most American climbers will ever face. The mountain has earned the nickname Queen of Sichuan, but queens do not typically kill this often. Between 1981 and 2023, Sigunyang's main peak, known as Yaomei, the youngest sister, has been the site of at least 26 documented mountaineering fatalities. The technical climbing required to reach the summit involves vertical ice walls, knife-edge ridges with 3,000-foot drops on both sides, and weather that can shift from clear skies to whiteout blizzard in under 30 minutes. Only about 30% of summit attempts succeed. The drive from Chengdu takes 7 hours through mountain passes that climb above 13,000 feet. Your ears pop repeatedly. The air thins enough that most visitors feel the altitude within the first hour of arrival. Changping Valley stretches below the peaks for 18 miles, a corridor of wildflowers, glacial streams, and Tibetan prayer flags strung between ancient spruces. The beauty is staggering. It is also deceptive. The local Tibetan and Qiang communities have grazed yaks in these valleys for centuries. They know the mountain's moods the way a sailor knows the sea. When certain cloud formations appear over Yaomei's summit, herders pull their animals to lower ground immediately. They have seen what happens to those who do not respect the warning signs. At sunrise, the 4 peaks catch golden light that turns the snow-covered summits pink, then orange, then blinding white.
The spectacle lasts about 12 minutes. Photographers and climbers describe it as one of the most beautiful sights in Asia. But the same sun that paints those peaks also destabilizes the ice. By mid-morning, avalanche risk on the upper slopes increases dramatically. The mountain gives you 12 minutes of beauty, then reminds you exactly what it is. Everything described so far exists within China's borders. But the most extreme places on this list lie in regions so remote that reaching them is itself an act of survival. Sigunyang's main peak has a 30% success rate and has taken 26 lives. If you think you would attempt it anyway, tell Explore Danger in the comments. And if you would not, that is the smart answer. Kailash Sacred Route, Western Tibet. No one has ever reached the summit of Mount Kailash. Not because it is technically impossible, but because 4 of the world's major religions consider it too sacred to climb. At 21,778 feet, this pyramid-shaped peak in the remote Trans-Himalayas of Western Tibet has been worshipped by Hindus, Buddhists, Jains, and followers of the Bon tradition for thousands of years. China has officially banned all climbing attempts since the 1980s. The traditional pilgrimage circuit, the Kora, circles the mountain for 32 miles, at an average altitude of 15,000 feet. Most pilgrims complete it in 3 days. Devout practitioners do it by full-body prostrations, covering the entire distance face down on the ground, which takes approximately 3 weeks. The oxygen level at this altitude is roughly 40% lower than at sea level. Every breath is a conscious effort. The landscape surrounding Kailash is almost lunar. Brown and gray rock stretches to the horizon in every direction. Wind scours the plateau with a constant low moan. The nearest town with medical facilities, Darchen, is a settlement of roughly 500 people with 1 small clinic. The nearest hospital is over 200 miles away, across unpaved roads that are impassable for months during winter. Altitude sickness strikes a significant percentage of visitors. Headaches, nausea, and disorientation are common within hours of arrival. Severe cases develop into pulmonary or cerebral edema, fluid buildup in the lungs or brain, which can kill within 24 hours without evacuation to lower altitude. Helicopter rescue is functionally unavailable in this part of Tibet. If your body fails here, your survival depends on how fast a vehicle can drive you down roads that barely exist. Each year, thousands of pilgrims still make this journey. Hindu devotees travel from India through one of the highest border crossings on Earth. Tibetan Buddhists walk for weeks from eastern Tibet. They arrive knowing the risks. For them, completing the Kora is not a hiking achievement. It is the single most important spiritual act of their lifetime. The mountain does not need to be climbed. It only needs to be circled. And even that is enough to kill. Mount Kailash has never been summited, not because humans cannot, but because 4 religions say they must not. If that kind of reverence moves you, hit subscribe. Explore Danger goes where the real stories are. Yarlung Tsangpo Grand Canyon, Tibet. The deepest canyon on Earth is not the Grand Canyon. It is not even close. The Yarlung Tsangpo Grand Canyon in southeastern Tibet plunges 19,714 feet from its highest rim to the river below. That is more than 3 times deeper than the Grand Canyon's maximum depth of 6,093 feet. For scale, you could stack the Grand Canyon on top of itself 3 times and still not reach the rim of Yarlung Tsangpo. The canyon stretches over 150 miles along the Yarlung Tsangpo River as it makes a violent U-turn around the peak of Namcha Barwa,
which rises to 25,531 feet directly beside the gorge. The river drops an average of 53 feet per mile through this section, creating rapids so violent that no one has ever successfully navigated the entire canyon by boat. 3 separate kayaking expeditions between 1998 and 2002 ended in fatalities or emergency evacuations. Standing at any accessible viewpoint, you see a world that operates on a different scale than anything in North America. Clouds form below you. The river is a white thread impossibly far down. Subtropical forests grow at the canyon's base, while glaciers cling to the peaks above. You can experience 4 distinct climate zones in a single vertical mile. The Monpa people live in scattered villages along the canyon's lower reaches. They cultivate rice and millet in terraced fields on slopes so steep that a stumble during harvest means a fall of hundreds of feet. Their trails, often the only paths connecting villages, are sometimes carved across rock faces with drops of over 1,000 feet and no protection of any kind. Landslides destroy sections of these trails every monsoon season, isolating communities for weeks. Much of the Yarlung Tsangpo Grand Canyon remains unexplored. Dense vegetation, extreme terrain, and violent weather have kept large sections unmapped, even by satellite. Scientists estimate that undiscovered waterfalls and cave systems exist deep within the gorge. The canyon is so remote that some areas have never been reached by any documented human expedition. 3 times deeper than the Grand Canyon, and large sections have never been explored by any human being. Let that settle in. Then keep watching, because the next 2 places were built by people who refused to wait for anyone's help. Guoliang Tunnel Road, Henan Province. 13 villagers carved this road by hand. No engineers, no government funding, no heavy machinery. Just 13 farmers from Guoliang village with hammers, chisels, and steel rods, working on a cliff face 300 feet above a valley floor. The tunnel took 5 years to complete, from 1972 to 1977. They removed over 26,000 cubic meters of rock, roughly enough to fill 10 Olympic swimming pools, using nothing but manual labor and black powder charges. The road tunnels through the side of the Tianmen Mountains for approximately 3/4 of a mile. It is carved directly into the cliff with over 30 window openings, blasted through the outer rock wall. These windows, irregular in shape, spaced unevenly, let in slashes of daylight that cut across the road surface at sharp angles. The tunnel is roughly 13 feet wide and 16 feet tall, just barely enough for a single vehicle. Driving through it, the light shifts constantly. One moment you are in near darkness, the next, a blast of sunlight floods through a window opening and blinds you. The road surface is rough-cut rock, uneven and damp. The outer wall of the tunnel is the cliff face itself, and through every window opening, you see nothing but 300 feet of empty air and the valley stretching out below. Before this tunnel existed, the only way in or out of Guoliang village was a path called the Sky Ladder. 720 stone steps carved into the cliff face, each barely wide enough for a single foot, with drops of hundreds of feet on the open side. The village had been effectively isolated for centuries. Medical emergencies were often death sentences, simply because no patient could survive the descent on the Sky Ladder. One of the 13 original tunnel builders, Wang Fuyun, died during construction when a misplaced explosive charge detonated prematurely. The remaining 12 finished the work in his memory. Today, this road is the village's sole vehicle connection to the outside world. Every bag of rice, every medicine delivery, every child traveling to school passes through a tunnel built by farmers who decided that isolation was no longer acceptable. 13 farmers with hand tools carved a road through a cliff because no one else would. But even that determination pales beside the final entry. A road built into a mountainside so hostile that it was the last county in all of China to receive a highway. 13 villagers, hand tools, 5 years. One road that saved an entire community from centuries of isolation. If that story moves you, share this video. Some stories deserve to travel further than the algorithms would normally carry them. Medog County Road, Tibet. Medog was the last county in all of China to be connected by road. The last. In a country of 1.4 billion people and over 3.1 million miles of highway, this single county in southeastern Tibet remained completely unreachable by vehicle until 2013. For decades, the only way in or out was by foot. Through mountain passes above 14,000 feet, across glacial rivers, and through some of the densest, leech-infested jungle on the planet. The road that finally reached Medog, the Bomi-Medog Highway, runs approximately 70 miles through terrain so hostile that it destroyed every previous attempt to build it. The Chinese government tried 4 times between 1961 and 2009. Each attempt was defeated by the same forces. Landslides that could bury a half-mile of road in minutes, snow avalanches from the surrounding peaks, and monsoon rains that wash away entire hillsides of loose mountain soil. Driving this road today, you cross the Guoliang Tunnel at 12,434 feet above sea level. Snow walls rise on both sides of the approach road, higher than a 2-story building during winter months. Beyond the tunnel, the road descends through nearly 10,000 feet of altitude in under 40 miles. The climate shifts from Arctic to tropical in a single drive. Ice becomes rainforest. Dry cold becomes suffocating humidity. Leeches drop from overhanging branches onto vehicles passing below. The Monpa and Loba people of Medog lived with this isolation for generations. Medical evacuations were impossible during winter months. Supplies had to be carried in by porters walking for 5 to 7 days over mountain passes where avalanches and exposure claimed lives almost every year. Teachers assigned to Medog schools sometimes waited months for a weather window safe enough to make the journey in. Even now, the road closes regularly. Landslides shut it down an average of several months per year. In 2020, a massive mudslide blocked the highway for over 40 days, cutting Medog off entirely and forcing emergency airlifts of food and medical supplies. The county, with over 14,000 residents, lives with the constant knowledge that their only road to the rest of China can vanish in a single rainstorm. Engineers maintain it year-round. Nature tears it apart year-round. The cycle has no end. So here's the question Explore Danger leaves you with. You have walked crumbling walls built on the bones of laborers. You have stood on wooden planks bolted to a cliff with nothing beneath you but 2,000 feet of air. You have looked into the deepest canyon on Earth and driven a road that took 5 government attempts and 50 years to complete. Every one of these places is real. Every one is still in use or still standing. And every one challenges something most people never think about. How thin the line is between a place that sustains human life and a place that takes it. Which one would you face? If you had to pick one place from this entire journey and go there tomorrow, which would it be? Tell Explore Danger in the comments. And if this video showed you a China you had never seen before, subscribe. There is an entire world of places like these still waiting, and this channel is going to every single one of them.